Let's decorate a cake in 5 minutes. Hi, I'm Emily and I'm going to show you how to pipe some pretty layered ruffles onto a cake. All you need is a piping bag and a petal piping tip, which is one of these that has a narrow end and a wide end. This one is a number 104 by Wilton. Drop the piping tip into your piping bag so it goes all the way down to the bottom, and to fill the piping bag with buttercream, I like to use a glass. Fold the top of the piping bag over the glass and that will hold it open while you fill it with buttercream. And you really don't need a lot of buttercream for this, just a few spoonfuls. So you definitely don't need to fill the bag any more than half full. This is my 4-minute buttercream and the link is in the video description and on britishgirlbakes.com. Unfold the bag, and this is why I like to use the glass, because it keeps the ends of the piping bag perfectly clean so you don't get buttercream all over your hands. For this technique, it's important that you hold the piping tip facing the right direction. You can see that there's a wide end and also a narrow end. You want to have the wide end of the piping tip pressed against the cake, so the narrow end is pointing outwards. Squeeze the bag and slowly pull it upwards, and you can go straight up if you want, or I like to do it at a diagonal. Go all the way up to the top of the cake, and then you can pipe another layer right over the top of the previous one so that they overlap, and this way they'll look like ruffled layered fabric. You'll notice that the slower you pull your hand upwards, the more ruffly your ruffles will be. And if you want to exaggerate it even more, you can wiggle your wrist, and that will make the waves even more dramatic. I have an online course on 50 easy cake decorating techniques, teaching all sorts of frosting and decorating techniques, and you can find out more by clicking here to visit my online cake school, or you can go to britishgirlbakes.com. When you get to the top of the cake at the end of each ruffle, release your pressure on the bag, so stop squeezing it, at the same time as you swipe your piping bag away from the cake, and that will leave a nice neat edge to the top of each ruffle. I like to chill the cake before doing this because that sets the buttercream frosting on the outside of the cake. And that means that when you pipe each ruffle, you can rest the wide end of the piping tip against the frosting and drag it slowly up the cake so the piping tip is grazing against the frosting. And this means that the ruffle will be right against the cake, so it will be more stable and it won't slide down the cake. But it won't damage the frosting because the frosting is cold and it's set, so it's firm and it holds its shape. So the pressure of that piping tip isn't going to leave an indent. Also, I like to use the same colour for my ruffles as for the frosting on the cake, but you can absolutely use a different colour if you prefer, and you can even make a gradient of ruffles, like an ombre gradient or a rainbow gradient. If you're enjoying this tutorial, you will love my classes where I teach unique cake designs broken down into 4 manageable steps in less than 20 minutes of video modules. Tap the link in the top of the screen to visit my online cake school to find out more. This is a quick and easy way to add texture, and I love this technique because the only thing you have to remember is to keep the wide end of the piping tip pressed against the cake, because it's the narrow end that creates the ruffles, so you want that end to be sticking out. But other than that, you can move the bag as fast or as slow as you like to make the ruffles as smooth or wiggly as you like, and you really can't go wrong with this technique. I love the way the ruffles look on this cake. I think it looks gorgeous like this, but if you want to make a cake topper to put on top and give it some height, click here to watch my tutorial on homemade cake topper ideas. I'll be back next week with another 5-minute cake. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already so you don't miss it, and remember to tap that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching.